The movie begins with Daniel, a house flipper who recently purchased a home, using a net to pull a red ball out of a dirty pool surrounded by a metal gate while his son Eric is speaking to a psychologist upstairs. Eric is having trouble sleeping. His psychologist tries to calm him, telling him it is normal to be upset after moving to a new place. She asks him why he couldn't sleep, and Eric responds by saying that he hears voices that tell him to draw pictures. When his psychologist asks him what these voices are saying, he replies by saying he couldn't tell her and continues to play with his toy. On her way out, the psychologist talks to his parents, Daniel and Sarah, and tells them that Eric has a lot of imagination, and these voices are related to him growing up alone, which meant he had to get used to playing and talking by himself. She attributes his lack of sleep to instability from moving around. After she drives off, Eric's walkie-talkie begins to emit some static noise, and Erica begins to draw. At the same time, the psychologist's radio also began to emit a static message. While she tries to change the tune, a fly enters her right ear. Her eyes became blood red as she appeared to be possessed by something which caused her to step on the gas. She is unable to slow down and hits a tree branch which breaks through her car's windshield and kills her. Then the fly gets out from her left bleeding ear. Meanwhile, Eric has drawn a bloody tree branch and pinned it to the wall. Sometime later, Daniel notices a fly infestation on his wall and starts to spray it. Then Eric calls him through the walkie-talkie and asks him to get his red ball out of the swimming pool, since he is not allowed to enter the area alone. Later, while Eric was in a bath alone, he began to hear some static voices. He asks her if his father hates him. Surprised by what she heard, Sarah asks him who told him such nonsense. Eric tells Sarah it was his father who told him over a walkie-talkie. She completely denies it and tells her son that his father loves him, but at night she asks Daniel if he scolded or yelled at his son. Daniel tells her he never did such a thing. He assumes that he is just acting out and promises to spend more time with him. A few hours later, Daniel is woken up by the sound of the pool gate, while Eric hears static sounds from his walkie-talkie again. Daniel closes the gate and comes back into the house, only to hear his son speaking in the walkie-talkie with someone. Meanwhile, the toys in Eric's room have started going off, and when he tries to pick up one of his toys, he sees a dead person's feet, who is standing behind the plastic sheet in his room. He immediately jumps on his bed and covers himself with his bed sheet. He begins to hear some whispers, and the voices stop as someone enters his room. Daniel, who is the intruder, begins to remove the sheet from Eric's son to see what is wrong, but Eric pushes him away, which causes Daniel to cut his hand on a picture frame. Then Sarah rushes into the room and begins to comfort Daniel. The next morning, Daniel sees a bunch of flies on the cracked wall but does nothing except express his disgust, and at the same time, he sees his wife and son arriving at the house. Surprised to see them this early, Sarah reveals that Eric has been expelled because he bit the principal who was trying to get him out of a closet he hid in. She decides to call the psychologist again, but Eric tells her that the psychologist has died and that the voices were the ones who told him. After a while, Daniel gets a call about the death of the psychologist, which shocks Sarah, who wonders how Eric could have heard about it, but Daniel brushes it off, saying he must have heard it from someone at school. Then Daniel goes to Eric's room and helps him calm down after talking to him. On that same night, Eric makes a drawing while holding his walkie-talkie close to his ear and goes out of his room. Daniel, on the other hand, is awakened by his wife to close the pool's gate again. He goes down the stairs and finds the door open, which causes him to grab his gun and look around the house. Sarah, who is also awake now, goes to Eric's room and finds out he is missing. Upon hearing Daniel's voice calling out for his son, she rushes outside. Daniel goes to the pool and finds his son facing down inside the pool. He quickly jumps into the pool and gets him out, but it is too late. After the funeral, Daniel and Sarah came back to the house. They are seen going through the horrific feelings of losing a child. Sarah decides to go to her parents and ask Daniel to come with her, telling him it would also be good for him, but Daniel tells her he has decided to stay and finish the house. They have a brief argument as Sarah refuses to live in the house after all that has happened. At night, while drowning in sorrow and watching some videos of Eric and Sarah, he sends a voice message to Sarah apologizing for his behavior in the morning. After turning off the video, he hears some weird sound coming from behind him and assumes it is someone on the walkie-talkie. In the morning, Daniel is woken up by a call from Sarah, who is worried about him. She expresses her concern about the message he sent last night. She tells him the message contains some weird voices that sound like screams. He calms her down, saying it must be a bad signal. He listens to the message to see what is going on, and his wife is right. He opens the recording on his computer to boost the signal and begins to listen to it. He hears the voice of Eric crying crying out for help at some point in the recording, which freaks him out. After a while, Daniel goes to attend the book signing of a famous writer named German Domingo, a paranormal events investigator who specializes in electronic voice phenomena. After meeting him, Daniel asks German, who is not convinced about Daniel's cause, to look at the recording insistently. After a little back and forth, he agrees. Next, German is seen going to the house of Eric with his daughter, Ruth, who doesn't believe the recording necessarily fits electronic voice phenomena. However, German is very excited to encounter such a phenomenon since the death of his wife. While she sets up her equipment, Daniel and German take a walk. Daniel expresses his desire and willingness to do anything to help his son, but German tells him that life after death may not be as pretty as people think. Daniel then takes German to the pool and explains what happened. The police believe that Eric was caught in a branch while trying to get his ball from the pool, but Daniel tells German this couldn't have happened since Eric can swim and he doesn't enter the pool without permission. Ruth sets up a thermal camera and other devices which help with sounds that the human ears can't control, and they start their investigation. German enters the master room alone, while Ruth watches him through the security cameras in another room. For some minutes couldn't see anything, and she grew frustrated as time passed. Then she switches to the thermal camera and sees a person sitting on a bed. She asks her father to tell Daniel to get out of the room as he is interfering in the process, but German tells her that Daniel is already outside. She switches back to the normal camera, but there is nothing there. This was very strange. The German goes to Eric's room upstairs, and as soon as he enters the room, he begins to lose communication with Ruth. He hears some kind of strange sound, and suddenly a very loud interference, which causes him to take his headphones off. German, Daniel, and Ruth watch the recordings together. This was further proof to German, but Ruth doesn't believe it. Nonetheless, German decided to continue working tomorrow. At night, German wakes up from a nightmare and hears the voices of his late wife, who killed herself. German follows the voice and enters the kitchen. Suddenly, he gets caught up in a memory of his wife cooking for him. She kisses him and he takes a seat. While telling him she misses him very much, she takes out a knife and starts cutting his arm. Luckily, Ruth enters the room to see what is going on, and German wakes up from the hallucination of the spirit in the house. German notices that his wife, Sophia, is not there, and he is cutting himself. After seeing what happened to her dad, Ruth goes searching for Daniel, calling his name. Meanwhile, a phone call from an unknown number wakes Sarah from her sleep. She picks up the phone and hears Eric asking her to come help him because a man his father brought over was trying to hurt him. The next morning, Ruth, who went out for an early smoke, saw a shocking event. Multiple cats were hanging from an old tree in front of the house. After a short time, German tells Daniel, who was burying the cats, that he has never seen such things happen before. He warns Daniel not to trust what he sees, and the recordings may not be from Eric. Suddenly, Sarah arrives at the scene and asks about German. Daniel tries to explain, but she is shocked after seeing the dead cats being buried. She leaves the scene without saying anything. Sarah goes into the house and sees her son playing with a toy. She tries to touch him, but he quickly goes under the bed. She kneels and sees decomposed feet on the other side, but no one is there when she looks up. She does this twice, but the last time, she is frightened as she touches the decomposed feet. Meanwhile, German goes back to history and shows them a similar event to the hanging of the cat. He realizes that they are dealing with the spirit of witches who were tortured at this very house, which served as a court where punishments were carried out on the witches. While he was explaining this, Sarah's dead body crashes through the window and hangs from upstairs. Daniel tries to carry her legs, but she is gone. This was devastating for Daniel. Later, while the police and paramedics are taking Sarah's body away, German realizes that they can find the witch's body. Daniel, on the other hand, is sitting devastated in Eric's room when he sees Sarah carrying Eric in her arms through the plastic sheet. Ruth, who decided to leave and was packing her materials, saw some strange things through the camera. While she was trying to show her father, they heard shots being fired from upstairs. It was Daniel, who was getting paranoid about the voices. They calm him down and tell him they will help him. Daniel leads them to an underground cave. After removing some bricks where the flies were coming out of, they discover the corpse of a witch imprisoned in a cage. She was responsible for all the murders. After German tells them the only way to get rid of the witch is to burn her, everyone gets to work. German begs his daughter to wait upstairs and goes under and has some strange hallucinations. Ruth, who is calling for her father, is lured into the other room by the spirit, who masks himself under the voice and image of her mother. Possessed by the spirit, she goes to attack her father, who is almost about to light the evil witch. Similarly, Daniel is also possessed possessed after being lured by the hallucination of his wife and son. He is about to light himself on fire after he poured gasoline on himself. However, German pushes Ruth away and fires at the gasoline-covered corpse and destroys the witch. As a result, Ruth is freed as a fly is seen getting out of her ear. She treats her father's and has a heart-to-heart conversation with him about her mother. But things didn't turn out well for Daniel after being free of the witch. He sees a picture Eric drew, which causes him to realize that he was the one who grabbed his son and drowned him while being possessed by the spirit. Unable to live with himself, he shoots and kills himself. The movie ends with Ruth finding Daniel's dead body lying in the pool. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.